items and report back. And then subsequently, we'll take any further direction we receive tonight and put that into the final budget, which will be heard by the council on June 25th. Our focus, again, specifically is those items that were raised in the last council meeting as either issues that we needed to address or were pending at that time. So we're going to kind of focus on that. Frank has a PowerPoint presentation, but obviously we can answer questions or anything you have. So we'll start with Frank.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members. What we did is we went back and looked at the assumptions, the issues that were addressed in our first workshop, and some of the items that council essentially asked for, and so we tried to work those into the budget. And the next few slides go to those issues. Excuse me. First item is the general fund cash emergency reserve. With the available fund balance and the projected revenue and the other items that are in the budget, we're able to bring that reserve up to the limit of the 50% of operating expenditures. That'll be an addition of $228,000 to the existing little bit less than 1.6 million reserve. Bring the reserve up to 1,779,000.
What was that number last year?
It was
228,000 less than that, so just under 1.6.
Sorry, at the beginning of last year. So what was it before we used the stuff out for the? Okay, I thought that number 228 doesn't seem quite the same value, but I guess it's the 228 plus this 146. So I'll have to look that up and just come back to you on that.
Do you recall what the percentile difference was? If we don't recall the exact.
Approximately 47% last year, so this will put us at 50% for our general reserve.
Okay.
Our general reserve, which is, they're separate reserves,
Right.
which you're probably
Got it.
thinking of.
That's where I'm putting those together. Got it.
Thank you.
And this, our next item is the reserve that Councilman Zerman asked us to look at reestablishing. Last year we had to utilize, excuse me, a couple of different reserves, a capital reserve and an infrastructure reserve for our capital projects, mainly the street rehabilitation project. But we're able to reestablish a reserve for future years, for use in future years as an infrastructure capital reserve.
So that's fully restores that one reserve.
Yep.
To the 146.
Thank you.
And I would along here too, the Infrastructure Management Advisory Committee had sent a memo that I shared with you out. One of the items in there, and I just interspersed these there, they did recommend that they suggest we continue the yearly incremental contributions to the reserve. We're actually fully restoring it, so we're beyond where they actually had. She was thinking we would build it up to the 150, but we're actually fully restoring it to 146 at this point. So we're a little further along than the infrastructure management had suggested.
Excellent.
Thank you.
The next item is another establishment of a reserve. It's for the trail maintenance. Our maintenance supervisor, Michael, had mentioned that some of the trail railings are starting to look a little bit shabby, and they're not cheap to replace and repair. So we thought that it would be prudent to start putting some money into a reserve for those repairs.
And again, the infrastructure management has talked about sort of replacing some of the spots where we do have continual runoff each year. So that 10,000 allows us to start moving in there's different concentrations and different kinds of materials you can put in. So every year we just keep replacing. This is, so the desire would be to put in something and get something that's more permanent, that we're not continually watching it wash away each year. And I think the infrastructure group has suggested that there's a different composition, and I'm not an engineer, but there's something that we put in differently. So this would be going toward that type of material.
And real quick, I apologize, I don't have this in front of me. There's like an AQMD portion of this for trails maintenance too, right? Is that?
The AQMD money, we used it in the past, but that is specifically, they tightened the rules. They want it specifically, it has to be related to
Uh-huh.
Problem with trails, we've had this discussion with them, I personally have had discussion with AQD. Trails are recreational and not intended, the purpose is to encourage walking, not reduce traffic. So they don't buy that, they will not reimburse us for that.
Okay.
So we tried that, but they sort of, want to close the loophole, if you will, so we don't have that ability, and I would say the loophole, because it's not really. But the permissiveness allowing us to do that is no longer there. But you're right, AQD money, we did use 55,000 in past years, but that is not going to be available to us. So if you could think of other ways to do that, we might be able to, the 55,000 to reduce traffic. That's the kind of thing we could do. So for instance, the concept is if we were to go for electric vehicles or something, charging stations, that 55,000 could be used for that purpose.
Got it. So we do have that AQMD money still available. It's just that it's not going to be for the trails.
We have to apply for it,
Right.
it's allocated, but if we don't use it, it gets reallocated to some other entity.
Okay.
Next item is the street rehab project. What we've determined we could do is put a total of $810,000 for additional street rehabilitation. It's broken up funding-wise from the general fund, our gas tax fund, and Measure M. Because the general fund would only have to pitch in basically just a portion of the project. We were able to include that project for next year.
How much?
Infrastructure management that you'll see, they recommended 900,000. One of the things that we do, you recall the study that we sent out that was done by consultants said to maintain the level of PCI that you have now, you would put just under 700,000. So this would allow us to, in the consultant's term, to go beyond 100, it'd be about 100,000 toward improving beyond our current PCI. So that would be putting additional resources in. And I believe Councilman Colacott had asked that we try and put more money in there. So there's an additional $110,000 on that. It is not, I want to be clear, it's not the same that the 900,000 that the infrastructure management, but it's in my mind, it's a long way toward trying to get there.
How much do we spend this year?
On the street budget.
I believe Akram had mentioned that the projected total cost is a little over $1 million, about $1,020,000 is what I utilized as projections in total.
Which again includes gas tax, Measure M, et cetera.
Okay.
I'll do this quick. One of the things that the infrastructure management, we've had some long discussions with them, was the idea that a street slurry seal, many cities use it. We don't typically do that type of much of a program in here. So the infrastructure management said, put 200,000 to it. What that does is basically improves the length, helps us roads last longer, if you will, that we can do. It would help the roads last longer that we have done work on. So in other words, it would allow us to make some improvements and sort of relieve some of the deterioration we have. And that would be 125,000. We use 75,000 of general fund, and we would use Measure M of 50,000. The 200,000 is what they recommended from the infrastructure management, but again, it's an effort on our part. It would be a new 125,000, where we aren't doing that right now. Or that would have been part of our current project. So combined, I want to say the infrastructure management said 1.1 million. We're putting 935,000 instead of 1.1, so we're 165, unless my math is off, 165 short of what the infrastructure management had. But on top of that, we're also putting in 40,000 for just basic street repair that they didn't include. So if you take that, so we're probably 125,000 less than what the infrastructure management suggested. But again, farther than we have gone, we would have normally gone, based on their recommendation. We're trying to get there and meet all our other needs and balance everything.
So when we do these budget items, I apologize for interrupting her continually, but is there already a plan for that money? Like you have a number, but does that number
Yeah.
actually correspond to specific things that
We
you're
would
doing?
deal with, we identified a number of streets already, if you recall, that just last council meeting, was it last meeting or the meeting before? I forget which it was. But we identified those streets. This would allow us to move further down the list of PCI. So the number sort of drives a lot of it, because if you have more that you can put away, you go for more streets, and you can accomplish more with those projects, or with
I meant specifically on the slurry seal stuff. Is that stuff that is also identified in that same? I don't remember seeing that.
The
so-
slurry seal is a new,
Right.
that's one of the things that's relatively new, so we would address those streets from a different perspective than actual PCI. We would look at what, some streets are more appropriate because you're gonna have to do, a lower PCI may require, and I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but a lower PCI may require a complete pavement repair or whatever. A slurry seal is not gonna be done on a PCI that's very low. That's you're gonna do on something that's maybe moderately or better shape, and it's gonna preserve it a little longer in that shape, if you will. Whereas if you've got a real low PCI, you're gonna have a lot more that has to be done to it, so you're gonna have to do complete pavement repair. So there's two types of projects that we're talking about
So
here.
here's what I was really asking is, if the infrastructure committee asked for 200, was that specifically like, did they have a delineation for how that 200, or did they just pick a number?
They sort of said that was the number, then they provided to us, and you've got the
And
information.
then you take that number and you work back into whatever the plan is.
You basically, on slurry seal, it's a cost per
mile.
per mile, or that you are, I forget how much they pay.
Square footage, I think.
Square
is-
footage or whatever, there's a rate that you pay for, so it allows us to do that much more that
Okay.
we don't do. So slurry sealing is not something we've actively done a lot of in the past. We typically do full pavement projects, so this is sort of a branching out and sort of expanding that effort.
Yeah, it's a cost-effective way to reduce your future pavement maintenance costs. It's like changing the oil in your car. You can continue driving your car without changing the oil, but eventually you're going to have major engine repairs. Here, you can let your streets go until they're so far deteriorated that they have to be rehabilitated. And the cost is, as I understand it, it's about 14 times more expensive to do it that way than to do some preventive maintenance as you go along.
And the number really is just a matter of coming up from where the amount of roads, and then a per square mile or per,
The amount of slurry sealing you do is based on the dollar amount you have
Got it.
available.
okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
Just because the
No, it's-
intertwine between the infrastructure, I wanted to kind of bring them all together.
Thank you.
The next item we have is one of the items that Councilwoman Miles had asked for. That's a State of the City event. So we are budgeting, or including in the budget, $10,000 for that.
Again, that's not probably going to cover this, and the next item probably will not cover the cost. We'd have to partner with Rotary and Community Services, but it would enable us to significantly help sponsor. Is that the best way to say it? On those
So
events?
specifically, I think it's important that we drill down on what we're trying to do with $10,000. What is that geared, what's the goal on that? I think the council has a decent idea, but I think when residents, if they've tuned in for the first time, they see State of the City and $10,000, is that a party? Is that, what is that? I think it's important that we get some clarification on that.
The idea would be that it would be a community event where the community is invited to hear the mayor talk about the year. Usually it would be done in late January, early February, and talk about the community, the good, the bad, talk about the budget, highlight any new businesses, any new events, and really just connecting with the community and having people come out and then again, partnering with some of these community organizations like the Rotary or Women's League or Foundation, and really showcasing what our little hidden jewel is about, and still having the mayor be able to give an update for those people that maybe are a little shy and not being able to figure out how to see us online or only get brief little snippets from the newspapers or stuff on the feeder, things like that. So that's
Do you want to talk about the next one too, with this Winter Wonderland? Is that-
Winter Wonderland. was an idea of just, you can't please everyone all the time. And we have a long-standing tradition, and this would not be in lieu of that, but supplemental to kind of having a Winter Fest, turning this, just like we do with Halloween Fest, turning this part of the center into an area where the community could come down and kids could sled on snow or, feed and take pictures with the reindeer, see Santa, have, again, Foundation and Women's League and Rotary and the band and different booster clubs come and help raise money for their events. And again, just another way to bring our community together and have a really great unit of, fun Santa's Village.
So
And
the way we came up with 10,000 is in talking to Councilwoman Miles, one of the things I asked was, how much does a typical event, your Taste of Villa Park cost? And she says $15,000 to $20,000 in that range. And I don't, depending on how extravagant or whatever you do. So I said, well, $10,000 makes us a significant player, but it doesn't, if the community groups don't come forward, it's not going to happen. It's really not. So it's got to be a cooperative effort.
It's got to be a public-private venture.
Public-private partnership,
I
so
think
I
that's
wouldn't, I didn't
a
go
key
fully down the
distinction.
road, yeah. You're right,
Okay.
so, that's, the $10,000 was an attempt, say $20,000 on a, budget for each event, and if we said 10,000, then we chipped in 50%, and either they come up with another 10,000 or the event doesn't happen. That's kind of how it would be approached from my perspective. And the events themselves would take shape based on the vision of that group, or the groups that how they want to do it, but it's not atypical to have, in fact, most cities do have sort of events. They may be tree lighting events, they may be picnics, or they may be something.
Street fairs.
Street fairs, or whatever the things it is,
I
something, a
attended one
community
this
type
past
event.
weekend.
Well, case in point, I think this is probably where this came from. My hometown, San Juan Capistrano, has a State of the City, has a Swallows Day Parade, has a number of different events, and they're great for the city. They're great for morale, and they're great for building neighborhood communities. They're remembering the history of the city, and I think if it's a public-private venture, and the city doesn't bear all the costs or even the lion's share, I think that really makes it tremendously successful.
So
And we
the
have
max-
some
the
we have some
maximum-
great groups out in the city.
The way I was thinking is the maximum we would participate is 50% of each event. And if they, say the event where it cost, 15,000, maybe we put 7,500 in or something, maybe we work out something, but that would be a cooperative agreement and discussion with both the respective entities. But in order to, you also don't want to shortchange the event and say, well, we're not going to give you,
Absolutely.
So that's why the 10,000 each, so that's to give you an idea of where the money was. I don't have a specific budget for it because it would depend on what that event shaped up and visioned out to be. Is there food? You would probably rent ice or snow or whatever you would rent for a winter fair. Would you rent do you have a Santa Claus here or something? What do you do? I mean, what do you do with the backdrop and all that kind of stuff? So that's something that would have to be sort of fleshed out with the respective groups.
Do we have any sort of limitations or anything we want to, I know the way we're talking about it right now, we're kind of setting some precedent on that already, but I'm thinking in terms of having, like, let's say for the State of the City, Rockwell's or Wells Fargo or one of our local businesses wanted to contribute too, and then it was State of the City sponsored by this other business. We're only really talking about community groups at this point, but we're not putting any limitation on that for the future or saying anything else about that at this point.
Nope. In fact,
Just
the one
highlighting that.
the one I went to in San Juan Capistrano was actually sponsored by a tequila. So, there you go.
Take money.
Which
any way you
Huh?
can. Take money any way you can get.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be open public-private partnerships, I think, is that's the kind of concept.
Great.
Restaurants or whatever would want to contribute. Maybe it's in kind services versus dollar amounts. So there's kinds of, bring food or whatever. That's the concept. So if the council was so inclined, we would have money set aside for that purpose.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
The next item is the Wanda Greenbelt Plan Development. It's an item that,
We talked about, one of the things we said was we don't have a plan at this point. I can't set aside money for a development of something because we don't have a plan. but we have the money to set aside, and if we need consultants to help us look at whatever we need to do, and we can start development and something toward those lines. So I put aside the 50,000. We really do, in my recommendation is we really do something there this year. We've sort of budgeted money the last couple of years and haven't, but it has been green only because of the grace of God and the rain we've had. It will brown up, and we'll be calling it the brown belt pretty quick during midsummer. So we do probably need to do something. What that might be, I don't know. But, you know, this gives us a placeholder, again, not to be a target spent, but amount set aside for, as a recognition of a priority that we need to get something done on it and actually do something on it.
Having put $50,000, did I interrupt somebody? Oh, for year after year, wouldn't this be like 250 by now? Isn't that a?
No, every year, if it's not spent, government
Wishful
budgeting,
thinking. We wish.
government budgeting, to the extent that you don't spend something, it gets
That was.
swooped up. No, it's a good question, because some people ask all the time, if you put aside money all these years,
No, where's the money?
where's the money? Well, the money gets grouped back into what we call fund balance available, carry forward for the following year. And that gets spent on every other thing need that we have.
Well, I'll take it on this year to come up with a plan for this.
I think we talked, there was a desire to have a plan and pull together something that would
Yeah,
work.
it's something that I think it's important. It comes from the community. I mean, we have Leah Cabrera that expressed, was the first person in Villa Park that really expressed interest when I raised concerns about really having a defined plan. And I think that when we get that community input from different folks that come from different backgrounds, it's not just my plan or Robbie's plan or Bob's plan or Deanna's plan or Mike Knoll's plan or anybody else's plan. It's a really collaborative effort of the community, a bunch of folks getting together and sharing ideas and remembering where our roots are and where we came from and where we are now. And given the new challenges that we may face with whether it's water or different demographic in our community, I think it's important that we have a almost like an ad hoc committee. But as far as the money, it was not an objection from me.
Okay, the one is the travel and conferences. That's actually a decrease of $1,000 because you recall we had an extra 1,000 for the mayor, and this is per the direction of the council. In the last workshop, we said, why don't we make them all even? And that's where you see that the 17.5 is $1,000 less.
I remember saying that. There isn't. We confirmed there's nothing else that the mayor has in addition, like other opportunities or other things that.
The mayor does, but candidly, I would venture to say there's not $17,500 worth of travel expenses that a mayor needs to incur. In my opinion, in my experience, and what I've seen in other councils prior to mine. Certain folks have more free time and like to travel and participate, have certain expertises that may necessitate their travel and provide additional expertise, but some folks have different expertise that lend them to staying more local and working on things at the grassroots level.
I wasn't sure if maybe that allowance had been set at some point specifically for some one extra thing that the mayor was doing, and now we're all of a sudden cutting that off, and we hadn't. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't
No.
another. Great.
Not to my knowledge.
And I don't think we've used 100% of the travel money in the past, have we?
No,
Yes,
sir.
you have. You've gone over.
Individually, you have
Individually,
not.
no.
Yeah, individually,
Collectively, you
not
have.
collectively.
Collectively.
Collectively, they have, not individually.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So an individual council member, but not council as an entire whole, is that what
Council
we're
as
saying?
entire whole has gone over.
Okay, which council was that?
Last year.
Okay, but,
But individually, that doesn't mean all five they collectively, some traveled more than others.
in the past, say, 4 or 5 years, how many times do we recall? Do we have any numbers on
I
that?
have to go research on that. I don't have.
Don't
the
have
number
that
off the-
data.
I just want to make sure that we have the right number here for the budget. I would hope that we have at least that basis. Because isn't that your concern? Is that the reason why you're asking the question?
Well, yeah, the concern was just, all I had was last year's, that the reason why it seemed that they went over is because there were specific council people that spent 2 and 3 times what they were allotted.
So My recommendation is you say, start with 17.5. A budget is a budget, it's a plan.
Right.
It can be adjusted anytime by the council. So to the extent that some circumstances arise where we say, hey, we all got to go to Washington DC because they're going to do something that we need to participate, or Sacramento, you have the ability at any time to amend and authorize something. In fact, we come to council anyway, and we can address that. So I think a budget for this point would seem adequate. There's the amount for everyone. And we start at that point. If we need to adjust it, that's one of the things we can do during the course of any given council meeting. We can address those accordingly. So I would start here and leave it at that. That would be my recommendation.
But I also think, if I can add and be so bold, I also think us now having the travel policy where everyone has that set amount and there's no pooling really makes us delineate and really think about what's going to benefit Villa Park, and if our going is really a value added and is it worth the money. So I think it helps us stay within those constraints.
Yeah, I want to emphasize, go back, the budget, these assumption things, a budget, we have to approve a budget by law. But you could go in the very first meeting in July and say, well, we got to change something because there's litigation or because something's come up. You have the ability to do that. There's nothing precluding the ability to, but we have to start at some point. So it is like your home budget. You start with something and then the dishwasher breaks, you got to replace it, so you change to something else. Or your microwave break, whatever happens, your car breaks down, you need service, whatever happens, we have the ability to adjust and amend. So I want to keep that and make sure you guys sort of understand that. This is our starting point for the year, and we'll adjust if we have to. That's sort of that, you have to be flexible on your feet. The governor budget, they may do something and, whatever, and we have to respond or whatever. So I think we need to, as a big picture, we start here and we try and get done what we, with those timeframes.
What's next, Frank?
I'm sorry, what?
What's next?
The city council upgrade, that's the one that's sort of near and dear to me that we've been talking about. We have 75,000. That is for this room. This room has some antiquated, came in the other day and I had someone actually pushing that with a pole to get it turned on and off because they couldn't find the remote, which is really not the way automation ought to be happening. So there's a lot of things that we're using a pull-down screen, we're doing things. We have money that's PEG money, which is basically public education, government monies that the cable companies give us. So it's toward that. So it is some general fund, but also the PEG monies. At 75,000 probably won't put us at complete state of the art, but it will be significant improvement over some of the size screens we have, the sound, the ability to communicate, the ability to have somebody's teleconferencing, those types of abilities, because this room is not just used by the council, it's used by a lot of people who ask us that all the time. Do you have this capability? Do we have the ability to project? Do we have the ability to do teleconferencing and things? So the 75,000 is something I would have to come back with a plan, which was asked for. But I think that there's a lot of more sophisticated technological abilities that are not being utilized in this room that are out there. This would also entail the back conference room, which is used pretty regularly anymore, where people could do teleconferencing there. Various groups use that in training and whatnot. So that would allow some potential projections and things like that we could upgrade there. So we'll be coming back with a plan. Because the dollar amount, we'd have to bid something like this out. This wouldn't be a sole source or something, but we would be allowed to come back to the council with a plan. This is 75,000, again, is not going to be state of the art of everything. But in talking to the other councils, Orange spent over 200,000 on theirs, on their remodel. And I don't even think they've got the most sophisticated types of things that they could have. But there's a lot of money that can be spent on technology if you want. So that's the 75,000.
I know you're already, sorry, jumping into this, but as somebody who does this for a living, if you have any questions, please feel free to come ask.
I will take you up on that.
In terms of picking vendors and picking people out there, I don't think I don't want to influence one vendor or the other, but I can certainly give you some suggestions or talk to you about what I've
Potential
seen.
bid list of who we could send it to.
Right.
That type of thing, that'd be great. Handicapped accessibility, this is a continuation of the monies that the mayor had talked about last year. One of the things that's a new increment here is I've started to have some discussions with the schools about this, because a lot of the handicapped areas we're starting with the schools are something that they need to be doing as well. So they've indicated an interest that, yeah, you know what, we might be willing to go into a project with you on something and deal with some of the handicap directly adjacent to schools. In other words, they don't want us to do schools without them being in concert anyway. But for instance, on the high school front and things like that, where they have to do ramps and whatnot, they're gonna have to pay for it anyway. So let's work and see if we can't do some of this stuff together. So we have 25,000. Our hope is that the school district would also be coming forward with some money on that.
On that number, did we have 25 or 40,000 for
25
last year?
last, we adjusted to 20, it was 25 last year.
Okay. And now is that what prohibited us from using 25,000 from last year? Because we still had a number of areas that had nothing to do with the high school that could have been
Staff time,
staff time. Okay.
the availability of staff to
Did
get
we
to it.
bid this out or no?
No, we haven't, we have not bid that,
Okay.
no. No, we
Do we have a
have
list
not.
of vendors or anything?
We have potential vendors, we just truly have been a number of other projects
Okay,
that
because
haven't been.
I just, I really, and I understand we have some projects here, I just want to make sure this can doesn't, get kicked down the road because the school district has the high school track issue to deal with, and then, the 300 building to deal with, and maybe other future bond funds or bond issues that they're going to deal with. They've got a lot on their plate too, so if we can handle, some small stuff, I think that would be great.
So, yeah, that would be point taken.
Thank you. Frank?
The computer upgrades we've talked about, this is a staged process where we were just hearing the Mayor Pro Tem was asking Tui, and she says some of our computers freeze up because some of them are old. 5, 6 years old is not uncommon in some of these. And so we have problems running some of the things on them. And so we're replacing them, and it's a process of what we're doing. So we have 5,000 move us into replacing some of the hard drives we have on various, and that's what we're doing there. The city website enhancement, that's the mayor and some of the others have talked about that. 10,000 is to help us move forward and upgrade the capabilities we have on our website right now, which I think, again, would make us more transparent and more accessible to the residents. Next element is the housing element. This is the 3 years. You'll recall, is due in 2021. Talking to John Douglas, the consultant, he said the first year we need to do some work on SCAG and RENA, the RENA numbers at this point, so we'll probably be spending about $10,000 this year on that. This is going to be a project we're going to do this summer in July or August. We'll be doing a work session with the whole council to bring everybody up to speed. But in talking to John, he said 10,000 would be a number that we should have budgeted for this year to get started and moving. Again, over a course of probably like 20 to 25,000 total. But the bulk of some of the work has to be done early in sort of gathering data and whatnot and pulling it all together. And I think this is something that the Councilman Colacott suggested we do get started, and our consultant definitely agrees it's time to get started now. There's going to be some challenges that the new laws have created for the city, and our overlay of the town center may not be satisfactory from the state's perspective next year.
Have we got a long-term contract with him or something, or are we required to?
We have a contract for a project, which allows us to carry it over multiple years.
Okay.
So he has extended the time frame without increasing the dollar amounts over the years.
Okay.
So we have not increased his dollar, but he's expanded time as we've gone through.
Do we believe he's the right resource to continue?
We've been very successful with his efforts in improving the housing element and those things. And he's well, you've seen him, he's been here. I think he's a very well qualified.
Understood. Just don't want someone to step up and say, he's been here for 3 or 4 years, and it's time for someone else to be a part of this process, so that's all.
I think he has a significant experience. I knew him actually in the county, and he was considered one of the premier experts at that time, and now this is 20 some odd years later, and I know the council.
Yeah, we knew each other at the county too. Just as an aside, I know we're talking about the budget, but if we could have, if he could give us updates as to any changes in state law that may be impacting the housing element.
Right.
I know that's something that the governor and the legislature is really active on this session.
Right.
And could have some significant impacts on us.
That Also, you'll see the general plan update is what we've already got going on that, so that's a continuation of the current project, which we have going on that, and that is sort of the money we have budgeted for that project. Again, it's a rebudget there, so it's not anything new, it's just that we have it highlighted because that's another element that's in our budget. Homeless litigation and the contribution, you'll recall it's about $8,400 that we have, and I think we've approved an MOU. I believe I just got the copy of the settlement from the city of of Placentia. They have approved, Placentia and Buena Park have both approved their sites, and they're moving forward. In fact, I believe that Buena Park has their operator already on board, and they're well into design, and they're going to do a prefabricated use of cargo bins to create room. So it's going to be a very modern thing. So we're moving forward on that. So that'll be our contribution. The 150,000 is a continuation of the budget contingency, which is used only to the extent we need it. And this year we have not used it. In past years, we have used it. So this year we'll budget for it. Again, anything over 20,000 requires me to come to the city council. But if there's anything less that requires, just immediate repair of this or that, we go ahead and fix air conditioning repair or plumbing or something along those lines. We budget those types of things there. ACCOC has changed their direction considerably. Bruce Channing is now the executive director. Bruce Channing is the longtime city manager of Laguna Hills. He was the city manager, I believe, when they incorporated. Extremely knowledgeable individual, extremely well-connected with both the city managers and with the legislators, et cetera, just because of his longevity. He just recently retired 2 years ago from the city of Laguna Hills and now is taking over this ACCOC. We have continued to participate. The 6,000, again, is not the number I've agreed to pay them. We're setting a number in the budget. I've told them we need to do a smaller number than that because we have to pay for each event anyway. I don't want to keep paying in just to participate. So he's agreed there'll be a sliding scale and us a cap number. And my hope is something closer to half of that amount that we'd actually have to pay. But I think from a perspective of the ACCOC, with Bruce at the helm, I think we're going to see a very different kind of direction than we had with his predecessor. And I think we're going to see some real proactive, positive things going on with ACCOC. So I
We
would
also
recommend.
pave something for League of Cities?
Yes, we do.
Okay, that's just not on here.
No, that's an ongoing, we pay that, and it's not. The reason ACCO is because we had pulled that money out of the budget last year. Now I'm putting the money back in. We have a merit pool that I put aside, 4%. I don't use all that, but it allows me a 4%. The 4% is based on the CPI in Southern California, is a 4% in Southern California region is,
In the increase or projected increase of property
oh,
tax.
and and it's consistent with the property tax. So it's a dollar amount as a cap that I use. Again, I spread that amount. Nobody's guaranteed anything. It's not a cost of living for anybody. It's based on merit and set goals and accomplishments. So I distribute that accordingly, and I underspend that each year. But, and again, we have to recognize if cost of living is going up at some point, we have to be recognizing that we do. Okay, I think the last page you'll see is the sort of those things incorporated into a budget. Now, this is, the reason it's done like this, a draft, is because any changes or things that you're thinking we need to incorporate, the plan would be to take any direction we receive and finalize this into narrative and, big, thick budget document that you'll see for June 25th. But in lieu of doing all those documents in advance, we're sort of giving you an idea. We've got it ready, we're ready to do it, but we're not going to pull the trigger and get something. Now, the Mayor Pro Tem asked for something that we will get next to the schedule, that you'll see a comparative year-to-year comparison, so you'll see where things went up and went down. So you'll see that as part of that. We'll make that part of the project, the package that's carried forward. But we just wanted to give you an idea of where things are in here. And the budget itself is several hundred pages, and we're well into the process of narratives and charts, et cetera. And again, I would record that I believe this is maybe the 8th year that we received a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award that we received.
No
So,
pressure.
yeah, we would like to again receive that award because I think Government Finance Officers Association, that's a really high accomplishment. So you can see in Frank's office, there's a plaque with all the years on it that we've won. So anyway, that's what we have. If you guys want us to make changes, if you need something that we haven't hit, I think we went back and went through, I listened to and watched the tape again of this to make sure we hit everything. If there's something I'm missing, tell me.
I think you did a phenomenal job of bringing it all together
Me
balanced.
too. This is
I
very well
agree.
done.
The only other question I have was, I didn't see anything in here about any potential new hires to offload some of the work that's going on right now. Are you anticipating any additional staff this year?
I've got a challenge that I'm going to deal with anyway, and that's the challenge of, as you where Kim is expecting in August. So we've got to transition anyway. So I'm going to, I'm going to have to deal with just maintenance right now of trying to, deal with that because she leaves and goes out on maternity leave for the 4 months. So I've got to train and pick up to that. So the idea of training and picking up and bringing on more staff is I'm trying to judge what we can accomplish and not. There are, I have had some discussions about potential transitions because we have some people, very candidly, succession planning, I guess is the best way to say it. I've had some discussions about succession planning, and I have an idea. If anyone would like to talk to me privately about each one of them, I can tell you. And I could tell you what the plan would be and how we would do it, whether the mechanism that would be handled. So I've got that, but as far as bringing on new staff to handle additional work, I'm trying to be reasonable what we accomplish. So sort of our budget's in line with what we're hoping to accomplish.
The other thing that I've run into in my particular position with the company I work for today is, as I replace people who leave, it costs me 20% more in salary and benefits to bring on that new hire. So I realize you've got a merit pool sitting here, but keeping in mind that if you lose people in that office or staff or whatever, chances are there's going to be an inflation of dollars associated with bringing on new people, and I don't know if you've built that into your contingency or not.
I think that's the IT industry. I think that's the IT industry.
No, well,
The
Public
IT
sector isn't
industry tends to be the
quite
highest
lucky.
inflationary market. It is one of the more in-demand
Yeah.
fields. But yes, I have thought through that, and again, some of them, we have the contingency 150,000, so I believe that we'll be,
Okay.
set to deal with it. Again, we'll have to, I could talk through any individual if you want to, but I probably not appropriate to.
no, and I understand, over time, over the last 3 years, I've heard a lot about, not having enough staff time to undertake certain things and make things happen. I see delays in things, and I'm concerned, as I told you last year, the year before, and the year before that, I'm concerned that you don't have enough staff to do everything you need to do.
Right. One of the concerns I'll be very candid about is when we do look at how we do services, is I bring on staff, I bring on a potential pension liability. So I'm very conscious of that. CalPERS is raising lowering the discount rate, so which means it costs us more for the same pension. I guess it's the best way to say it, right, Frank? So when they're going to drop it to 7%, which it means it's going to cost us even more. So I'm kind of conscious of that, and that's what we'll deal with each of the plans. So I'm kind of thinking through each of the positions and what we do and how we do it and the workload.
Not
But your great
necess-
point well taken.
Yeah, not necessarily always has to be a full-time person. It can
Right.
be a contract individual or something like that, but just making sure that you've got some contingencies built in here if you need to bring on a consultant for a short period of time or whatever to help you out to facilitate some of these activities or whatever.
I
that you've
had the
got
discussion
something.
about a consultant opportunity just the other day about,
Okay.
for instance.
Anybody else have any comments?
Good job, good job.
Bobby? Bob? Chad? Nope. Okay.
Okay, with that, our plan would be to come back on June 25th. Actually, you'll receive a document in advance of that so that you have a chance to review it. And that time, we'll add the schedule that the Mayor Pro Tem has asked, so year to year, you can see the comparisons.
It's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good
Steve.
job,
Unless there's
Frank.
anything further, we'll be adjourned. Any member of the public want to comment? Okay. Thank you.